Welcome back to Streaming Media Connect 2024. I am your mystery of ceremonies, your media cartographer, Evan Shapiro. Thanks for coming to this great panel, which is a topic near and dear to my heart, subscription management and the great rebundling. Are we actually going through a great rebundling? We will cover that topic here. But first, I want to thank our diamond sponsor for Streaming Media Connect 2024, Native Frame, and Steve is going to play a video from them to thank them again. A silent but deadly on point video there from Native Frame. Thank you for sponsoring this great panel. As Steve mentioned in the chat, the first person who can name the band and the song that was just playing during the prep there and is here at the end of the panel, crucial element of that, will win a $50 gift certificate from Amazon from Streaming Media Connect. Thank you so much. Put your questions in the Q&A, not in the chat. If you put them in the Q&A, our moderator will be able to find them. If you put them in the chat, he will not be able to find them. And speaking of our moderator, I want to thank and bring to the stage our great moderator for this conversation, Paul Erickson. He's the principal at Erickson Strategy and Associates, a brilliant mind in this streaming space. Break a leg.
Thank you, Evan. Hello, everyone. Welcome to our second session this morning, Subscription Management and the Great Rebundling. Thanks for joining us, and we've got an all-star panel lined up for you. And I promise you're going to want to hear some of the great takeaways in store from our discussion today. And our topic is a very timely one. We have, in today's market, it's very fragmented, competitive, and financially pressured. And this streaming video market's intensely focused on every advantage when it comes to acquiring, retaining, and upselling subscribers. And the threat of churn is ever present in the OTT video landscape. And maintaining engagement and loyalty is complicated even further by free and ad-supported options that are mixed into today's market. And so optimizing subscription management and leveraging the power of bundling are thus increasingly important ways to drive better performance of any video business. And today we're going to explore why and how. So on deck to discuss all of this in terms of realities, insights, and strategies, we're lucky to have with us John Giegengack, who's principal and founder of Hub Entertainment Research. Welcome, John. Josh Rosenblatt, who's head of partner management at Plex. Yale Wang, who's EVP and head of marketing at Fubo. Rameez Tase, who's co-founder and president of Antenna. And Dr. Guy Bisson, who's executive director and co-founder of Ampere Analysis. Welcome, everyone. Let's have all of you introduce yourselves if you could. John, could you briefly tell us a bit about yourself and your responsibilities at Hub?
Sure, Paul. Thanks for having me. I'm John Giegengack. I'm the founder and the principal analyst here at Hub. The company just turned 11 years old this year.
Excellent. Thanks, John. Josh, what about you?
Great. Sure. Josh Rosenblatt. I head up partner management at Plex, the largest independent global streaming service. In my role, I manage our over 300 partner relationships across AVOD, FAST, transactional, and any other business model we add.
Thank you, Josh. Yale, what about you?
Thanks, Paul. Good morning, everybody. My name is Yale Wang. I'm the EVP and head of marketing for Fubo. So my responsibilities include user acquisition, subscriber management, and coming up with some of the bundles.
Thanks, Yale. Rameez, tell us a bit about what you do at Antenna.
Hi, all. Rameez, co-founder and president of Antenna. Antenna provides market analytics for the subscription economy, of which the streaming economy is one big part.
Thanks, Rameez. Guy, tell us a bit about your role in Ampere.
Thanks, Paul. Yep, I'm Guy Bisson. I'm one of the co-founders of Ampere Analysis. We are a London and Los Angeles-based analyst firm focused entirely on entertainment.
Excellent. Thanks, Guy. And as for me, I'm Paul Erickson. I'm founder and principal of Erickson Strategy and Insights, my namesake, of course, which is an industry analysis, strategy, and advisor consultancy that specializes in the media entertainment technology and consumer technology sectors. and I'm a 20+ year veteran analyst across multiple firms such as Omdia, Parks Associates, IHS Markit, and a few others. And I've covered a number of different pieces of the media consumption puzzle, and I've concentrated a lot in the last half a decade on that unique intersection of technology, services, content, and consumer consumption that we call the streaming video business, which has brought us all together today. So now that we've introduced ourselves, I'd like to kick things off and set the backdrop for the discussion by having each of our panelists spend 2 minutes each and one slide to tell us what they think are the most interesting takeaways or most important insights about our topic in their opinion. And let me cue up the slides here. Guy, would you like to take the lead? Let me get your slide up for you here. All right.
Okay, great. Thanks, Paul. Yep, I wanted to keep it simple and just make a couple of points which I think are fundamental to where we find ourselves in the industry, by which I mean the streaming industry today. In 2019, the end of 2019, I put out a report, a thought piece really, saying that the next logical step in streaming has to be bundling. And this slide really explains why I was wrong about that. In the lead up to COVID, the growth in streaming was extremely strong. And throughout the COVID pandemic, of course, we had so-called subscriber carry forward, where growth was sustained through that period for Netflix, but also for the newer entrants, the studio streamers. Post-COVID, as the graph on the left shows, there was a significant turnaround in that growth. And what that meant was that we saw a shift from a customer acquisition at all costs strategy to a customer retention strategy. But COVID acted as a kind of protection. It created not false growth, but that carried forward growth that meant that bundling didn't happen when it should have. So my first thesis is that bundling should have happened sooner. Why should it have happened sooner? Because fundamentally, in the subscription business, however many decades you want to go back into that business, churn is the biggest challenge. Bundles are a really great way to prevent and reduce churn. And the graph on the right, which is based on some of our consumer research, shows that, I think, quite clearly. What I've done is put together a nuclear family, so a 35-year-old male, a 35-year-old female, and a household with children, and shown their genre interest skews. And you can see that any one individual has a few points of great interest that they're really engaged with. But when you add them all together, you complete the circle. And that means you only need one person in the household to say, I'm not giving up my sport, I'm not giving up my reality content, I'm not giving up my romance movies, and you've got a very powerful churn reducer. And because we've moved into a different market reality, that is why bundling now is so important. I will leave it there.
Thank you, Guy. Fascinating. John, you next up?
Sure. So I think the reason that, just as Guy said, the reason that bundling is so important right now is that it's a more and more confusing, diffused time if you're an entertainment consumer than ever. So the average number of entertainment sources, almost all of them subscriptions that respondents in our study said they were using in their household was 13. Only about half of those were video sources. The rest of them were things like gaming, music, podcasts, social media, stuff that we don't think about as TV, but it competes for the same disposable time and disposable money that TV content does. And so we're in this situation now where things have become so diffused that sort of simplicity matters as much as price when people think about making decisions about which platforms they're going to use. 81% of people in our study this year agree that there's a limit to how many platforms they can use, even if they can afford to have them all. So in that case, simplicity is more important than price. And if about 76% agreed that budget is the main factor that determines how many sources I use. So you can see that price, which is almost always the most important thing in what people do, at least when you ask them, here falls even a little bit behind just finding a more simple solution. And in fact, simplicity has become so much more important that it's 59% of people said they'd be willing to pay for an app or service that lets them manage, use, and pay for all of their subscriptions in one place, even if it doesn't come with any content of its own, even if all it does is make using everything else simpler. And that's really by definition what a bundle does. And we think there's tremendous opportunity to reduce churn by bundling services across TV, but also across different kinds of entertainment content and even beyond entertainment to other kinds of categories.
Thanks, John. Yeah, that's a very interesting shift in a consumer preference scale there, where the former price is everything, convenience and simplicity is actually trumping that now. That's amazing. Josh, what are your thoughts?
Cool. I like to follow John, as I'll start with the complexity angle. And I think the fact that the volume of content and the options and the availability of different services, business models, et cetera, have led us to a really complicated area. And Plex as a platform is looking to bring on as much good content as possible, but we're cognizant that there are a lot of players out there. Content is segmented by exclusivity and a whole bunch of different things. So, if content is one pillar of kind of the way we look at the world, the next thing is discovery. And how do we as a company and industry look at discovery and how folks can explore content, find content that they love or interested in, and then, know actually where to watch it and all those types of things. So, for us, discovery is something that's really important. And it's something that we look at kind of as broader than just content that we license, right? And, we want to be able to find the best show for everyone, as well as possible, right? And then the last element that we're really excited about is social. And it's something that I think is pretty intuitive, and that when you're making a decision about what to watch, you rely a lot on your friends and family. And, so for us, content discovery, and then building in a social component to enable people to share and see what their friends are watching and make it more of a communal experience is something that we're really excited about. So those are all of the things that a lot of the things that we're building into kind of our plan and how we help, make the world a little less challenging on the media landscape.
Thanks, Josh. Yeah, I think social is increasingly on the radar, both for video consumption and its ability to influence consumption and serve up social recommendations. Rameez, what are your thoughts from the antenna perspective?
So this topic is a little bit adjacent to bundling, but obviously churn has been a big topic in the industry, and churn rates have climbed from, call it 3 to 4% on a monthly basis for the premium SVOD category, to 4, 5, and even 6% if you're looking a little bit earlier in the year. But what we found, which kind of goes against the common narrative these days, is that 40% of people actually resubscribe to a service within 6 months, and it's actually more than that if you're looking at about 12 or 18 months. And so on a net basis, people who cancel, net of people who resubscribe, you can actually see the net churn rate there is closer to 3%. And if you're looking at a specific cohort, about half of the people that signed up for a given service, if you fast forward 18 months later, they're still subscribed. The navy blue there is survival. So if they signed up, cancel, and resubscribe, they're not re-entered into that curve. The reason I think this is so important is because often when people talk about churn, they compare streaming churn to churn in other categories, SaaS or telco. Well, let me tell you, having run a SaaS company, when a client cancels, we don't bank on them resubscribing within 6 months. And so thinking about churn dynamics differently than I think is the common narrative in the industry is going to be very important. And it feeds all of these optimization strategies, whether it's bundling, pricing, advertising, et cetera. So we thought this was important to highlight, given it's a little bit of a narrative violation.
Thanks, Rameez. Yeah, it's very interesting to me because I go a little bit of a ways back, covering traditional pay TV, and then the concept of churn, I think it's important to remember that streaming video and OTT is very different than traditional streaming, traditional pay TV, if you will, or legacy pay TV. And the consumption behaviors are different, but accordingly, the nature of churn is different, right? And win back is different. So it's great of you to highlight that. Yale, how do you see the situation from the Fubo perspective?
Thanks, Paul. So Fubo today, as most people know us, is a virtual MVPD, and we've been bundling since day one. We carry all the major leagues from the NFL to the NBA to MLB to NHL, as well as others. And right now, the primary reason anybody gets Fubo is for the sports. But we're pretty expensive. We're $79.99 a month, and at the top tier, we're over $100 a month. And so similar to what Rameez was saying, we do see a lot of people turn off the service and then reactivate the service when, for example, it's the start of the NFL season. But I think churn as it's been traditionally defined is a little bit different than how we think about churn at Fubo. What we want is for folks to be able to stay within the Fubo ecosystem if they look to either pause or temporarily cancel their subscription. And so right now, while we have this great virtual MVPD bundle that serves the sports fan, we're also coming up with new tiers that are trying to meet consumers where they are. So we recently just launched our free tier, which allows somebody who's turned off the Fubo ecosystem to still have content to watch when they, for example, click in on their smart TV. And we've partnered with folks like Tase and ABC News Live to make that possible. And very shortly, we'll be rolling out some other additional content gatherings. For example, we made an equity investment in Bare Knuckle Fighting Championship, which is one of the sports leagues that we saw has a really high over-indexation with NFL fans and with the rest of our content. So we're thinking that one of the ways to combat churn isn't necessarily the traditional win-back offers, but giving folks the ability to subscribe to multiple different types of services, as I think the definition of what churn is evolving.
Great observation. Thank you, Yale. And we're back. And I think first, I'd like to thank all of you for those really great insights and some incisive takeaways for our audience. There's a few things there that I myself screenshot to save for later. And all of that, one, shows kind of the difference and diversity of perspectives that all of you present in terms of this topic. And it also all sets up our conversation nicely, which is going to start with my first question. Why bundle, right? So how does bundling fundamentally help tackle the challenges of churn and retention right now? And what are the ways that it really differs from the bundling strategies of old, from only a few years ago? Guy, you have some really great perspective starting as far back as your days at Screen Digest. I would love to hear your opinion on this.
Yeah, it's an interesting question because fundamentally, it's not different, but it's different in every way. Let me explain what I mean. The rationale for bundling, I think, is the same. So the rationale is churn reduction. The rationale is cost control for the consumer, because obviously we are hitting a ceiling in terms of the number of paid streaming services that consumers are willing and able to pay for. So giving them a 30% discount when they take 3 or 4 is another great strategy, both to attract new customers and keep the ones you have. But it's fundamentally different because if we go back to those pay TV days, you had a middleman. The pay TV operator effectively was a middleman on which the various services were hosted, be they channels or other things. And today we don't. And the importance of the middleman was the single unified interface. A single unified interface for content discovery that was a very familiar system, a grid system for the old EPGs. And also not entirely unified, but a much simpler environment for ad buying, as the industry now is moving into that space. So in that respect, the bundle is very different from those old school bundles, but the rationale for doing it, I believe, is fundamentally the same.
Thanks, Guy. John, what are your thoughts in terms of why Why bundle? Why now? How does it differ from the past?
Well, I think it's different from the past in that no one wanted to bundle last time. So if you go back even several years ago, everybody realized that Netflix was a bona fide business. All of the streaming platforms didn't want to cooperate. Each of them wanted to be the next Netflix or take over from Netflix, and the cable companies all wanted to, strangle streaming in the crib, try to rule that behavior out so they could keep their business model going. Today that hasn't worked at all. And if you look back, I think kind of the turning point for me was when David Zaslav said in the press conference, I think it was in 2021, that the independent streaming platforms need to think about bundling on our own before someone does it to us. And I thought that was a very telling 180-degree reversal from that there's this kind of capitulation now, I think, where all the independent platforms have realized that they don't have the scale, and it will be really hard to get the scale with so much competition that Netflix has. And it's that scale that you need in order to be more resistant to churn, in order to make a bigger profit. So I think that's the reason that people want to do it now. I think that it's very fortunate that this capitulation is coming around at a time that consumers really need that simplicity more than ever. And it's a way that if you can make things simpler for people, you can offer them a discount financially as well. But the simplicity is something that's valuable enough that people will be willing to pay for it. So I think it could be also a really good way for these companies to bolster their bottom lines, because God knows they can't really afford to cut their prices right now.
Yeah, and I think you touch on something valid there, where it's tangible for a lot of consumers who have overload in a number of dimensions, right? So they've gone from the content overload of old, or not so old, of recent times, to now billing relationship overload and everything else. And so I think simplification is very tangible to a lot of consumers, whether you're a heavy streaming video consumer or not. Rameez, what are your thoughts on why bundle? What are the justifications, and how does it differ from the days of old?
Well, I think John and Guy did a really excellent job of kind of describing why one would want to bundle. I think, as interesting as the why is the how the bundle will be constructed. And Yale did a really excellent job teeing me up here by showing exactly how Fubo or a kind of prototypical virtual MVPD would consider itself a bundler. Of course it is. You, of course, have big bundles like the Disney bundle, and now it's getting even bigger with Max. And, the proof is in the pudding there. It basically works, right? If you look at the Disney bundle versus the Disney standalone subscriber, there's about a 2+ churn percentage improvement. And versus a more seasonal or ad hoc service, there's about a 7% versus ESPN Plus, standalone churn improvement. But frankly, there's the kind of Fubo method. There's the synthetic bundle of a number of services coming together. Frankly, the biggest bundle is one I don't think people even talk about as bundle, which is the channels environment. And 70% of all specialty services are coming within Amazon. It's not as high for the premium ones, of course, but Amazon itself may be considered a bundler. So I think how is, as interesting as the question is why.
Yeah, that's very interesting, Rameez. I think, how do we define the difference between aggregator and bundler when really to the consumer it's just a single source, right, for consumption. So to them, I think maybe the differences are a little bit more academic than they are to us, but the channels environment is a fascinating one. Yale, what are your thoughts from the vMVPD perspective?
So I kind of started the other way, is why do people churn in the first place? Is it, super high price? Is it a cumbersome user interface? I think ultimately it's actually really simple why people churn. They're just not being entertained, whether it's because something is, in the off season or whether the show is over. Ultimately, there's a disengagement with the service. And when you see the number of logins that people come in on a daily basis, or the number of programs watched go down, that's going to be the leading indicator of churn, right? And by that point, trying to save them with a win-back offer, lower their price is almost too late. So obviously bundling creates efficiencies in terms of what type of content people can watch. Can we get somebody who is coming in from the NFL season, which only lasts 6 months out of the year, right? From August to February. Can we, using our recommendation system, get them to watch other types of content? Maybe we can get them to watch baseball during March and April and carry them through into the summer. And so when we think about that, that's going to inform our decisions around how do we create these bundles, who should be part of the bundles, and what type of price makes sense relative to the return on those investments from a return or retention perspective.
Thanks, Yale. I think that leads me to the next question, which I think you are well positioned to start off in terms of giving me some perspective before I pitch it to a few of your other fellow panelists, which is, why are consumers looking for simplicity now? As John had alluded to, how can the industry address this challenge via subscription management and bundling strategies? And I know that Fubo is right at the front lines dealing with all this right now. So what are your thoughts on how to address this?
Well, I think Josh did a great job with this slide where he outlined the proliferation of all these plus services. It's pretty much made it impossible for a consumer to know where any content is or any game is. Like, I'm a huge sports fan, but if you were to tell me where's tomorrow's Yankees game, I'm probably going to have to flip between the local RSN, or is it on Peacock, or is it on Fubo, is it on Paramount Plus, is it on Roku channel, is it on Amazon? It's just, the great irony is that, fans have more choice than ever, but it's become harder than ever to find where to watch and what to watch.
Right.
As an industry, we've just really made it a disservice to fans to be a fan, right? So I think what fans are looking for is ultimately a one-stop shop, a place where you can easily access all your content, regardless if it comes from NBC or if it comes from Amazon or if it comes from this or that. Like, that's just way too much, choice. And I think people are busy. They've made choices all day in their work, from the partners, discussions. All they want to do is just sit down and quickly find what they want to be able to watch. And so that's why simplicity, you see that value prop has increased as the proliferation of choice has increased.
Good points. Josh, you want to pick it up?
Sure. Yeah, to just tag up on that. For us, similarly, we start to see ourselves as a super aggregator, and our origins are in AVOD and FAST and in personal media before that. But we like Fubo are looking to bring as much content into the Plex ecosystem to enable users to find anything that they want. And more and more it's becoming that premium VOD service plus a reformation of the cable bundle, and the sports world is all over the place and lots of interesting things going on there. But I think there's a lot of interesting stuff with just the reformation of the rights related to cable versus FAST and AVOD. And then for us, the universal discovery, right, to be able to go into Plex and use it as a utility to find shows on Disney Plus or a movie on Max, be able to watch list it, and for us to be able to look across all of those different services and advocate for content across that, even if it's not on Plex and we don't monetize it or stream it. It's something that we're able to provide as a more independent platform to help users just find what's out there and what's interesting to them.
Yeah, I think the aggregation role is important. Let me reword that. I would say that the role of discovery is becoming increasingly important with as Yale had mentioned, whether the games are spread out across multiple networks and services due to the rights, or you have the content that is relevant to the consumer sitting across multiple services and so on. I think the discovery challenge is only increasing, right? But I think discovery is fundamental to maintaining sustained engagement from the user.
And
John,
can I just interject there, Paul, because I think that's fundamental. I mean, what is missing in the streaming bundle when you put Max with Disney and other services is that simplicity of navigation. Putting different services with different interfaces into a bundle does not serve that. It serves lots of great purposes that we've all talked about, but it does not solve the simplicity question.
You're right, and it doesn't serve the consumer. So for them, they experience, as you mentioned, multiple UXs, multiple types of discovery experiences, but all of that gets in the way of what they really want to do, is to just find something that's relevant to them, regardless of source, right? So that's that holy grail of discovery and super aggregation that we hope to get to one day. John, simplicity. I know it's a point that you have lots of great information on. I'd love to hear your thoughts here.
Yeah, I mean, the last couple of folks said it exactly right. There's nobody sitting around right now thinking, oh man, I just wish I had more stuff to watch. Nobody feels that way. What they do want is they want an easier way to use all of the stuff that they have. When we ask people, why did you quit using this platform within 6 months of signing up? The number one reason is I ran out of things to watch, that's nonsense. I mean, there's thousands and thousands of stuff to watch on any one of these platforms. What they really mean is that I couldn't find something to watch, or I just wasn't using that platform enough to be worth the cost, even if the cost was the same as all of the other ones that are out there. So just making it easier for people adds a lot of intrinsic value on its own. The one sure proof, I think, of this is data that we gather each year among people that have like a cable system, like a Comcast X1 that lets you integrate streaming platforms into the VOD. And when we compare the perceived value of a Comcast subscription of somebody that has Netflix but hasn't integrated it with their cable TV menu versus one that has, the perceived value is 50% higher among those that have integrated, and the likelihood to churn in the future is about 60% lower. So in both of those cases, both those sets of people are using the exact same platforms. They're paying the same amount of money. The only difference is that one has integrated that so that they only have to use one interface to watch both, and the other one hasn't. And that one difference, with no change to the product, no change to the price, is enough to create these massive differences in satisfaction and likelihood to churn. And every single company that's out there right now could be doing that if they keep in mind what Guy just said. They're just creating a bundle of more stuff that isn't any less effort to work through, doesn't really solve the problem that people have right now.
Thanks, John. And that helps bridge to my next question, which I think Josh might be well placed to answer. What are some additional aspects or benefits of bundling, especially when we think about ways in which bundling can be used to drive improved recommendation, better content consumption performance, user acquisition, marketing efficiencies, and so on. And I think, with how Plex is structured and the diversity of sources from which the Plex proposition can draw from in order to generate that experience for the user. Josh, what are your thoughts on ways in which bundling can drive some of these other types of improvements?
Sure. So we're a relatively young company in the content space, right? We've been, licensing content for maybe 4.5 years, right? So relatively new. And but within the strategy, it was always to bring something that was broader than just the content that we would potentially license for AVOD or FAST or what have you. And with that, we've been able to expand to transactional content, to the Discover portal, which allows us to, provide that discovery to Netflix and to Disney and all those things, the watch list, the social component, it's called Discover Together. And all of that does really amazing things with regard to data. We're able to see usage across content we've licensed, but we're also able to track across movies in their theatrical window, shows that are exclusive to Disney or other platforms, And it allows us to really have a broader view on what's happening in the marketplace. It allows us to know users better and be able to customize and market and merchandise things better to different audiences. It also helps with content acquisition at times. So I think for us, the benefit is just that it allows us to widen our net and bring in more information and more users to help us just broaden kind of the portfolio and just our overall insights.
Thank you, Josh. One thing I wanted to cut over to, a little bit of a segue into a different topic here. Well, same topic, but different variation. Let's look at the seasonality of content, right? So not just sports, but perhaps, popular series, different pieces of high value content that, you usually see a lot of subscriber acquisition, then a fall off after the season ends. How can the industry leverage bundling effectively to combat this, right? To really combat the retention issues that are presented by very high value, popular seasonal content like sports. John, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I think that any single platform has a better to really kind of hold people's attention and to reduce the number as much as you can of those folks that say I left because I ran out of things to watch. You have to have an interface that's easy to use the content, but then you also have to have kind of a high volume of content. So lots and lots of things for them to look through. And if you can include sports as part of that, because that sports is naturally seasonal, but it's also unduplicatable. If you want to watch the NFL, there's only one of those. If you want to watch Premier League, there's only one of those. But what you need is stuff that keeps people occupied once that piece of content they signed up to watch in the first place is over with. And so I think bundling helps the standalone platforms, which are really robust, but they're still not as big as Netflix. There's still lots of notable buzzworthy shows that are going to, just by the law of averages, show up on some other platform. So the more that you can kind of combine those together, I think you reach a critical mass where fewer people are going to say, I ran out of things to watch and this isn't worth it anymore. But the big caveat there is that it's not just enough to like mush all that stuff together. You have to do it in a way that is still easy for those people to use and not just as hard as using those 3 platforms or 4 platforms independently.
Thanks, John. And Yale, I'm very curious, from the Fubo perspective, because sports has been one of the backbones of Fubo's proposition. What are your thoughts on how to use bundling to combat seasonality?
Yeah, so, one of the things that we've spent a lot of time thinking about is what are the different LTVs of the various plans and bundles and add-ons that we have, and how do we increase the LTV, right? And that's just a function of both retention and margin. So when we are looking to add different add-ons, we can tell pretty much, is this going to extend somebody's life cycle after, for example, the NFL season? I think everybody in the pay TV industry knows that there's this feast or famine type of dynamic. Whenever the NFL comes back and the college football comes back, great, everybody's acquiring subs. But then once we get to Q1, there's going to be a churn event that happens if we can't get those folks to watch other stuff. And can then we bundle in different add-ons, for example, making this look like an NBA League Pass, transition that user's engagement so that while there's a proliferation of entertainment options, that they still stay within the ecosystem, and now they're watching another sport. Potentially there's additional margin opportunities there, but ultimately it's extending the life cycle and the LTV of that user, which then ultimately, as a marketer, gives me a little bit more leeway to have a slightly higher customer acquisition cost, because now I can go after somebody that's going to be a little bit more profitable. So those are all the things we think about when we think about seasonality. It's not just, is the NFL season going from August to February, but of those NFL cohorts, which of them can we extend into perhaps into July, and potentially then there's only a month before preseason comes back.
All right, thanks, Yale. I want to get to a couple Q&A questions, so I'm going to move things along here. Let's look a little bit deeper at bundling strategy for a second. Rameez, I'd love to ask you on this, since you had mentioned the channels environment. in terms of bundling strategy, when do you feel it's really effective to utilize bundling in the channels environment as opposed to, let's say, delivering a bundle via a multi-service type of bundle, sort of like a Disney proposition?
Absolutely. Let me bring two themes that have been pretty well spoken about already in the last 30 minutes. The first is simplicity, and the second is the presence of non-video activities in a household, which John at Hub just brought up. Well, we can look at Amazon, but I would be remiss if I didn't also say that YouTube, Roku, Apple also have channels environments. Amazon's easy to understand. It has one massive advantage, Prime, which has 70, 80, 90 million American subscribers. What we see is that 21% of all Prime customers, SVOD subscriptions, are actually through the Prime Video channels interface. And when it comes to the eligible subscriptions, so taking out a Netflix, which doesn't offer through Prime, over half, if you're a Prime customer, over half of your SVOD subscriptions are coming through Prime Video channels. And so I think that's a very clear articulation of bundling non-video with video and the power of distribution. And if you log off this webinar and go turn on your Amazon Prime Video interface, I think it's pretty clear the simplicity. I think in many ways maybe complexity, but the simplicity of having all channels in one place and the show or the program as the atomic unit of discovery is actually very, very powerful, because as consumers, we think about the show we want to watch, not the Plus or the streaming service that we want to watch it on. And so I think merging together simplicity with non-video distribution is essentially the case for a channels environment, and the Amazon platform has done it quite well if you look at the number of subs that are coming through there.
And I would just add, I think Rameez is absolutely right. I would just add that if you look at the standalone video bundles from the providers themselves, they're usually offering the platforms at a discount. And Amazon, the value proposition for channels is just built around convenience. They're not offering a discount at all. They're taking a bunch of the money for themselves. But it's proof that simplicity now is something that people are willing to pay for, at a minimum, pay the same for. I'd argue that they'd be willing to pay more for it.
Yes, good point. I think as I mentioned before, I guess as we all mentioned before, simplicity is a recurring theme of increasing value for consumers today. Josh, I wanted to ask you the next question. Bundling isn't just about content, right? We can think about what else can be bundled. And in that regard, what are productive strategies that we're seeing today in terms of bundling non-content value and services to really, drive all those advantages, right? Differentiation, retention, and loyalty.
Sure. So at some point, maybe Plex will bundle hot wings or something like that in with the service. At this point, we haven't gone too far off the grid on that, but to us, the kind of non-content thing that we're most excited about, that we think provides a significant value and is a real game changer is the social element for us. So Discover Together, the concept is pretty simple, that when you go to think about what to watch, IMDb score is great, Rotten Tomato is great, but what Lloyd or Sean says or is watching is almost the most important thing at times, right? So being able to keep up with your friends and family and what they're watching, and to have that information be integrated really seamlessly into the app and the discovery process. So to us, it's a really interesting way to make the experience of watching content, even if we're not always together, right? More social. It helps people figure out, this show exists, right? If 3 or 4 people in your friend group start watching a program, there's, maybe a 60% chance that you know the show, right? But there's, a pretty solid chance that you've never heard of it, right? And we send you an email saying, Bob's watching show X. You click on the trailer, right? And poof, you've learned about something new, and It's not complicated. It's not something that's stressful. It's basically more native. So I think for us, really leaning into that element to help kind of bring more social elements around the content discovery and viewing process is really interesting to us.
Thanks, Josh. And I think we'll see more of these possibilities open up as time goes by, and more service providers, more content owners, more streaming services start to broaden their perspective on what defines a bundle, and what really has power to increase the amount of stickiness that they have with the consumer. And it may be outside of simply diversifying the content offer within the quote unquote bundle. Different question here. We've got 2 more questions I wanted to get through, and then we'll get to Q&A. So if you're in the audience, if you have some questions you've been burning to ask, put them in the Q&A box, and we'll try to get to them in the few minutes that we'll have left. But my next question, I think from 2 of our analysts here, John and Guy, I think I would love to hear from the 2 of you on this one. Let me frame it this way, like the pay TV environment we're in today, it's not the pay TV environment of old, right? It's not yesterday's simple, easy to define pay TV environment. And, part of that's because ad-supported consumption continues to grow, and with it, the use of hybrid business models. And the majority of streaming video viewership velocity today, right now, and growth and so on, is being driven by some type of ad-supported consumption. And a lot of traditional former SVOD only services are now leveraging a dual revenue stream thanks to advertising. And does the bundling concept apply here? How does the industry apply bundling to maximize performance in this incredibly diverse viewing environment that we have today? And define performance however you want, whether we want to call it total revenue generation or engagement or retention or what have you. How do we apply bundling to this mixed ad-supported infused environment? John, what are your thoughts?
Well, any ad-supported platform to be successful needs scale. So you need to have lots and lots and lots of users. That's something that Amazon achieved in a really short time just by kind of defaulting everybody into their ad-supported tier, Tuesday at 3:00, unless they opted out of it. But that's an area where even Netflix, that doesn't have much need to bundle in general because they're the front runner. They do have need for greater scale in their ad-supported platforms. So we've got just one example of how bundling can help the economics of any one business model. If you look at the Xfinity Stream Saver, that includes Disney and a third one I can't remember, and Netflix in that bundle from Comcast. But it only includes the Netflix ad-supported plan. So everybody that signs up for that bundle automatically gets pushed into Netflix's ad-supported plan, helps them gain scale, and they are, penetrating pay TV customers, which are the people that are among the least likely to have a Netflix subscription, although most people have one these days. And it's also helping them do that, with Comcast marketing dollars. So Comcast is going out, finding all the customers, recruiting all the users, and Netflix is able to, kind of efficiently sit back and have a relatively churn-resistant new group of people in their ad-supported platform, giving them more reach and a more compelling product to sell to their partners.
Good point, John. Guy, what are your thoughts?
Muted.
You're on mute.
I can tell it was good.
I knew I was going to do that. Okay, so 2 points. If we look at the whole video ad market, 60% of the market goes to 2 players, which is Google and Facebook, and it goes to those 2 players for a couple of fundamental reasons: scale and simplicity, one-stop shops for ad sales. In terms of engaging the customer and keeping them in one place and keeping them coming back to the same destination for viewing, the bundle absolutely makes sense for advertising, just as it does for subscription. And if you think about it, streaming players have a lot of advantages over Google and Facebook. They are brand safe, like television. They have high quality programming that is long form and engages for 2 or 3 hours a night. And people are generally watching on the large screen in the household. So for advertisers, it should be very attractive. What is missing is the simplicity. And I keep coming back to the point of the one-stop shop in terms of ad sales, because you're not gaining an advantage as a buyer to go to a bundled proposition, because fundamentally they are separate within the bundle. And that's the issue that the industry is now facing.
Thanks, Guy. And then I'd like to ask the last question here, and actually I'll pitch this one to you first, Guy. You had mentioned the large players. What are your thoughts on why certain large players, we won't necessarily name them, or we can, they're against being part of a bundle, or at least as a direct partner?
Well, I think we can name them because they said it openly in their analyst call last quarter. Netflix have said they're not interested in bundling, Xfinity aside, because that's part of their contract. No one else is in the position that Netflix is. Launched streaming in 2007, really ahead of the curve in terms of that. And no one will ever achieve the position that Netflix is in. So I think if we think about who is going to be anti-bundles, it's probably going to remain that one player. And it is a unique situation that they have, and a unique position as the anchor service within the household entertainment bundle.
Right. Thanks, Guy. Rameez, what are your thoughts on why some large players, maybe just this one large player, they're against being part of a bundle?
Sure. Well, when you think about kind of why you bundle, or the economics of bundling, it's really about how many casual versus super fans, right? There's people that may have subscribed once, but they're not a loyal user. If you can find those from Netflix's standpoint, that's incremental. And what are you giving up? Well, you have to offer the bundle to everyone if you don't want certain government agencies knocking on your door. And what you're giving up is the loyal users who would have paid the high price, who now can pay the lower price. And I think for larger services such as Netflix, but honestly for other large services as well, the give to get doesn't quite make sense. So of course, all of these bundles, they reduce churn. They're great for the consumer. But and Yale said it, do they increase revenue for the service? And Yale seems to have a pretty sophisticated lifetime value predictor for any bundle they can offer. And I think, for example, if you were to cross Netflix with Apple TV Plus in our super fan versus casual fan matrix, there's about as many super fans as casual fans. So the give to get, especially when you think about the net loss on ARPU, it doesn't make sense. And so, I think certainly churn goes down, but from the business's standpoint, is it a better business decision? I think often that answer is a little bit more murky, which may be fueling Netflix and others' rejection of bundling.
All right, that's a good point. And like Guy said, I think that they're in a unique position, especially as kind of the poster child, bannerman, pick your analogy there, for streaming video, that they have immense brand power, immense loyalty, and so on. And so maybe they look at it as why, is there actually any kind of fundamental gain for their business, for their profitability, for their revenue generation, above what they can already organically generate? And that's a difficult question. That seems like they're saying no, but they are unique. John, what are your thoughts on why some players might be against being part of a bundle?
Yeah, I mean, I think that Netflix, not that they're against it, they just don't really need it. They don't have a reason to do it, and they are the reason that these other platforms do need to kind of band together. I think, Netflix, given their ambitions in gaming, for instance, they might show more interest in the future in, being part of a bundle, or maybe creating a bundle that includes content outside of strictly video, where there are more sort of they're not giving up as much incumbency if you're talking about video games, for instance, once they kind of get some of these studio games off the ground. But certainly, I think Guy nailed it, that Netflix is in the position where they don't, anybody that bundles with Netflix would be getting a lot more out of it than Netflix would.
Right. Thanks, John. And we're almost out of time, but there is one Q&A question that I want to get to here. And I'm pretty sure a certain one of you will definitely chime in on this one. So the question is, what role will social media play in the discovery process? And isn't there an opportunity to push and promote content on TikTok for users to discover content and start streaming seamlessly with as low friction as possible? That sounds like a technical question, but let's at least simplify the role of social media in the discovery process and for promoting content, especially as it pertains to TikTok. Any of you want to take that one?
I guess, yeah.
Go ahead, Josh.
Yeah, so real quick. So I think for us, and what we've seen is it's a really great ancillary platform for creators, for producers, for filmmakers, and for stars to either build up and promote something or themselves, right? It could be a platform for them to build up their brand value, to broaden themselves to other things. And we've seen it be a really interesting way to revive old franchises. So we did we licensed the 80s show Chips from Warner Brothers last year, and it was a big thing for us at the time, and we wanted to kind of promote it as much as possible. So we built a Chips on Plex channel on YouTube. Right. And we just funneled in as many cool and fun clips from Chips. And
Oh, that one.
yeah. And all the great stars that got brought into it and all that kind of stuff. And it did amazingly well. It's like the amount of usage and all those types of things. It was a really cool thing. So we're totally interested in it, and it's just where we fit into it versus where the actual producers and the studios and distributors come into it. But I think it's definitely an area that we're excited about.
Thanks, Josh. Actually, let me squeeze another one in here. Yale, if you can do this within a couple sentences, that'll be great to get us within time. A question for Yale specifically came in over the Q&A. Do you find add-ons to be as effective as bundling in reducing churn?
So in a couple of quick answers, yes, depending on the add-on. Add-ons allow us to create customized bundles that then can address the specific cohort. Those will perform super well. But if it's an add-on that's already well distributed, it's already on Amazon Prime channels, it's already on Verizon, that's probably not going to do all that much.
Thanks, Yale. Thanks for squeezing that in. And I'm afraid that is all the time we have for today. So even though there's a lot more left to discuss, I'd like to close by giving thanks to John, Josh, Yale, Rameez, and Guy for their time and insights today. Well done, everybody. So many great takeaways I think that the audience left with. And for those of you in the audience, hope you enjoyed this discussion, and be sure to check back in half an hour for Evan Shapiro's fireside chat with IMAX SVP Vikram Arumili. So thanks again for joining, and take care.
Paul's doing my job for me. Thank you, Paul, for doing that plug. Great panel. The attendance at the conference all week has been really amazing. And the stick-to-itiveness of the audience is, I think, credit to the level of content. This was a great conversation, really important conversation, something I completely nerd out about. So, and I agree with a lot of the things that were said there. So thank you very much for that. Great job, Paul. Great job, panelists. The walk-up music was Chicken Strut by the Meters. Again, I do not know how you all know this stuff so easily. Sandy Pelland, congratulations. You'll get a $50 gift certificate from Amazon and from Streaming Media. As Paul said, come back in half an hour for a fireside chat with the GM and SVP from IMAX. It's going to be a great conversation. Again, thank you to Native Frame for being our diamond sponsor. See you in a half an hour.
Take care.